speed of change is what we need to adapt to. The reality, the new reality that we have to adapt to. We have to be much more nimble, much more flexible, much faster in our approach in order to change with the changing needs, in order to make sure that we are able to actually adapt to what the market needs in the coming years, on the one hand, and on the other hand, to make sure that as technology changes, people have an opportunity to actually change with that. Because that's when the opportunities get created, and ultimately, that's how we're going to preserve jobs. And as I told you, our primary objective is to make sure that jobs are preserved, because that's what underwrites prosperity, and that is what underwrites the overall welfare objective with which any just society today needs to function. And to enable that, we need to operate at multiple levels. And of course, you need to start from the school level, ensure that in schools, modern technology is taught, people are aware of what AI is all about. My colleagues in the school education department have already declared that from the coming academic year, artificial intelligence and education about that would start right from class 3. So right from a very early age, people would have exposure to technology. In colleges, universities, and institutions, we've requested the Department of Higher Education to ensure that artificial intelligence, especially as a horizontal technology, is taught across domains and across disciplines. We are going to be in a new situation where what's going to matter is not so much your ability to program or code. That, I think, one of the AI models will do it for you quite easily. You need to know your domain very well, and the second thing that you need to know is how you can use AI within your domain. I think these are the two things that are going to matter. So even if you are studying an art history course or a journalism course or a law course, you need to know how this technology is going to affect your particular domain or discipline, and that becomes the second major approach. We also need, of course, in order to preserve an edge and in order to stay at the leading edge of innovation, we also need to support extensive higher-end research in this particular area, support our own scholars who can actually work in this area. In some ways, the geopolitical developments across the world are probably a tailwind for this. They really support this. We can actually retain a lot more of our talent in our country. We can support them much better. We can actually nurture talent which will return to our country. I think that is the way that we need to look at the kind of situation that is emerging across the world. I know industry sometimes expresses concerns. They want us to talk to our counterparts in other governments to support movement of people, an easier movement of people. While undoubtedly, we believe that there needs to be free movement of talent across the world, I think the kind of limitations and restrictions that are being imposed can in themselves become an opportunity, and we need to seriously look at it in that fashion as well. So that is talent at multiple levels within the academic system. But in addition to that, I think there's a very, very key imperative to actually upskill and retrain those who are already in industry. I think that becomes the critical thing. Across industry, when I speak to people, I've had discussions with Mr. Nambiar, I've had discussions with his colleagues across various other companies. All of them are conscious that there would be a change in the kind of jobs that would get created, the nature of the kind of work that they do. And in some ways, what we attempted to do through the India AI Summit, and that is significant, is to give Indian companies and to give Indian entrepreneurs the opportunity to actually showcase what is it that they can offer to the world. Because in the context of AI taking over as a technology across the board, horizontal, general purpose technology, what becomes important is how exactly you create applications and solutions which can then be actually deployed. So the development of these applications and the deployment of these applications is really the opportunity which is available for Indian businesses and Indian companies to explore and move forward. The Niti Aayog had produced a report a few months ago, which was also released, which showed that if about 2 million jobs get lost in one form, there would be 4 million jobs which would get created in this sector in order to support what goes forward. And it is to support these 4 million jobs that a program like Future Skills Prime really needs to work towards. I was very happy to see the numbers, 27 lakh people enrolled in Future Skills Prime. But not very happy to see that only about half of them, a little over half of them actually enroll for a course. The number who register, the gap that gets created by the time those who enroll for the course. And then there's a further gap in the number of people who actually finish the course. I think we need to sort of look at this in greater detail, figure out why this is happening, and this nimbleness and flexibility to adapt to the changing circumstances and adapt to a situation where we are able to upskill, reskill, retrain our workforce to meet what the newer economy actually requires, and to actually have this process happening every 3 or 4 years is something which is critical. In some ways, I feel very happy and comfortable that I'm almost at the end of a fairly long career, because this kind of when I joined the workforce and you were looking for a job that will sustain you for the entire time. I don't think that is the reality anymore. The reality has changed. The reality today is that you have to be ready to make the switch, you have to be ready to adapt to the changing circumstances, and that is something we have to inbuild. You're no longer, you're virtually an entrepreneur even while you're working. You have to reinvent yourself from time to time, and that is the reality that we need younger people to adapt to, and you have to be flexible and nimble. And we have, in a sense, the changes in the labor laws and all of this, which industry has asked for a long time, is something which supports that movement. So I think from a policy perspective, we have created an environment where the law permits this. You can be nimble, you can have a workforce that can sort of transform, you can support them with skilling programs, upskilling programs, retraining programs, all of that is available. You can deliver at scale thanks to the digital platforms like Future Skills Prime. You can do all of this. The enablers are all there. The objective ground conditions are all there. Now we have to actually go and get this done. If this is to be India's century, and if we have to ride the wave of technology to actually becoming a Viksit Bharat by 2047, then you have to get this done. The most critical thing to enable this to happen is talent, and that is why I said right at the outset that today's conclave is actually discussing one of the most critical subjects that we need to be concerned about, and we need to actually deliver on specific commitments and specific plans that we make in this space in order to make sure that as a country we get where we want to. Thank you once again to my friends in NASSCOM and others who have created this opportunity today, and thank you very much for the patient here.
Much sir, for your very guiding, very clear and directional address. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have the two leaders who are going to be in conversation with each other. Once again, I request and invite our Secretary Sir to be kindly gracing the dais along with the President NASSCOM. We have the fireside chat between the two leaders on the topic of Future Ready India, skills, scale and systems.
Skills and how critical is talent and skills going to be part of the broader ecosystem that we are building as a nation. So I also want to congratulate you for a very, very successful Impact Summit. I know that we all felt for the first time, I think India sent a message very clearly to the rest of the world that we've arrived as a nation, not just in terms of numbers, in terms of volume, but also in terms of quality of output and what we've been able to demonstrate. Of course, it's only the beginning, obviously. That by itself doesn't take us anywhere, but it provides a platform for us to follow through. And many of the dialogues we've been having thereafter, I think it enhances that position that we've been able to create with the Impact Summit. We had a NASSCOM NTLM, which is the NASSCOM Technology Leadership Conference, which happened in Mumbai. Immediately after that, about a week after, we had the AI Impact Summit here, and most of the conversation was actually taking those conversations that we've had in the AI Summit further, in terms of taking one more level deeper into saying what would be exactly the actions which we need from the industry and so on. So, and what we also learned, as I mentioned earlier, is also, it's not just about technology for the sake of technology, but it's also about deploying them at scale, and then the scale factor that came out very loud and clear in the Impact Summit. The fact that, this cannot be just a few people sitting around and having a conversation amongst, ourselves, but it's also about taking it further, deployment and so on. So how do you see, when you look at this whole deployment of AI at large, and especially India as a nation, it's very challenging. I mean, we talk about sectors like agriculture or healthcare, and it's always been difficult, but I thought as India, I think we make it even more difficult because of some of the infrastructure issues that we would have around some of these challenges that we always face. But technology may be a solution for some of that, and we always believe that talent will make those challenges a little bit more easier in terms of having the right folks addressing this. So do you see a role for Future Skills Prime, if you may, in terms of enabling India to sort of reach out to this larger deployment at scale, not just in terms of the technology folks, of course, educating or skilling the technology team is much easier, but when we look at broader deployment, it becomes challenging. So any thoughts around how do we approach that?
I think in the Indian context, the most important thing to achieve the kind of growth targets and development targets that we are looking at is to make sure that we are able to deploy artificial intelligence as a technology in specific real sectors of the economy. I mean, the enhanced productivity, the enhanced efficiency that you are likely to get from applying this technology can be realized only when it gets applied. Say, for instance, you cited agriculture, manufacturing, healthcare, education, governance, a whole host of these areas. Of course, financial services and others, where automatically I think a lot of these things would get absorbed. But the critical element is making sure that we are able to apply this technology in those areas. And for that, you need talent. I mean, you need people who understand what the benefits of the technology are in their respective enterprises. Sometimes those enterprises are going to be pretty small, they're not going to be very large, and it's going to be difficult for them to actually make all the investments which are needed. Some of that problem will have to be solved by what the government is attempting to do through its AI Kosh platform and through a kind of a digital public infrastructure, if you have, of an AI-based infrastructure which can be deployed at scale in terms of access to the compute, in terms of access to models, and in terms of access to data. That is something that the government can actually create an enabling environment. But once that is done, I think the critical element is that solutions and applications have to be designed and they have to be deployed in each of these sectors. And I think there are important roles to be played by private companies themselves, startups, because they are usually your disruptors in chief, and of course also industry associations which can then push for wider adoption. I think it needs to be an effort where all of us need to get together, get the act together, make sure that the right incentives are available to actually push this into each of these sectors. So when you see enhanced productivity, enhanced outputs, then you'll see two things. I mean, people are immediately worried saying, well, jobs go, but I think my own hunch is that far more jobs will be created. You'll be able to do it not just for India, but for the rest of the world. As I said, one opportunity in the India Summit was to showcase this to others, and I got a lot of feedback from many of the people who were in the expo and otherwise as to very, very interested inquiries from across the world, visitors. We are close to about 8,000 delegates from overseas as well. So many of them very interested in how this will happen. So, I mean, that becomes the job creation opportunity, and that also becomes the opportunity to enhance productivity in the real sectors of the economy. And that's really what takes you on the path of development in the district.
So this is interesting. We skill the people to leverage AI, use AI in a meaningful way, responsible way. So that's pretty much for all, meaning everybody who start with could get their hands dirty with a device or a mobile phone, whatever. But usage, responsible usage, advanced usage, leveraging AI to do everything they do. So that's a big chunk of population. This certainly needs some skill. Above that is people who actually, in some way, use technology to create applications, do programming, interface with AI. So that may be many of those, that level of capability that's so it's all many, and on the top of it we have some which we need to create some really deep skills. We call it deep tech in our own parlance. People who can actually do research and development, understand creation of technology. I'm not necessarily saying LLMs, we need to build models and so on, but maybe some of that as well, but also in terms of understanding the true meaning of integrating AI, integrating the high-end capability with enterprise. So enterprise adoption is very low, and as you know, Krishnaji, the technology is going at a certain pace, but the enterprise adoption is much lower. It has to catch up with the whole, the gap is very wide at this point in time. And one of the reasons is that we don't have those people at the top who can not only be technologists in the sense, they're very close to the sort of the R&D type of capabilities where you can not only look at creating a model, but also in terms of integrating that with an enterprise system, which is very hard and very time consuming, very laborious. And then leveraging the other, the second tier, if you may, in terms of proliferating more. I mean, that's where the services piece comes in and so on. So any thoughts on, I know that Future Skills Prime certainly plays in the bottom, maybe in the middle, but we haven't been able to stretch it to the top of the pyramid, the niche skills.
The top of the pyramid, I think we are addressing to a substantial extent through some of the support that we are providing to PhD programs and MTech programs and in that nature. And also I think there's a pivoting in some of the management programs and so on which are veering in that direction. So to some extent there is work happening there. The number that you require at the top of the program is not all that many. I mean, it's a relatively small number. Probably, an expert once told me there are probably about 300 people in the world who can actually build a model. So, and we are some of them in the country, so I wouldn't say that we shouldn't try to build a model also. We must build models. We already started on that exercise. The India AI mission supports that, and we had some launch during the AI summit as well, and more are in the pipeline and will get launched shortly. So because of all of this, I think we are fairly well placed, and especially for the middle run, I think through retraining and reskilling the huge numbers that we have, we've close to about 5 million people who are in the IT sector, who could actually take on those roles in the days to come. So in that sense, I think the world at least looks at India being fairly well endowed, particularly in the middle level. With some effort, we will do it in the higher levels as well, and that's where some of the opportunities come in. There would be spillovers from some of the GCCs, plus some of our scholars who are sort of moving up the value chain. So at the top level, that's going to happen. So the broader work towards getting everybody in at the how do I put it? The broader work of getting everybody in at the lowest level in terms of adopters of the technology is again a task which we have to do. It is an evangelizing task. I think a lot of people do ask. Again, the fact that we leverage the AI summit to truly democratize access, suddenly it becomes the talking point. A lot of people are interested. The awareness grows, and that in itself, kindles that sense of curiosity as to what is going on and what is all this about. And I got calls from many people saying, "Can you actually come and tell us what is happening, and one day spend some time and explain what's going to happen in this space?" So I think that sort of awareness is spreading, and the younger generation are really adopters, and they're quick to sort of pick this up, and I think that's where I place all my hopes. My only concern is that in the days to come, the shape of things would be that you need domain expertise more than at any other time. Because if AI is going to do a lot of stuff for you, you need to have enough domain expertise to know where it's going wrong or where it is not an optimal solution. And you don't have blindly accept what it's saying. So how are you going to balance retention of some of this domain expertise, which would be there amongst people who are experienced and who spend some time in the domain and know that now. They don't know the technology well enough, but they know the domain well. With a younger generation, which is very good with the technology, but not so sound on domain. So how are we going to cross that sort of bridge is, I think, one of the key challenges in the way that the talent itself is nurtured. How we are going to segment it and make sure that you address both sets of issues is going to be one of the key challenges that we have to.
I think you said it so beautifully. I think the amalgamation of these two worlds, if you may, I think is going to determine how successful we are in a certain field. I see that in the medical field, for example, the doctors come with certain view, and then the technology will play a huge part in making their jobs a lot easier or much better. But the ability for them to adopt that in a certain way and leverage technology is still a little bit of a challenge. So do you start from here and then go this way, or you start from technology and go back into the domain? I think there's no question that domain is going to be such an important capability that we need to build over a period of time. And we see that in the IT services business. And I want to make sure that we set some of those myths which is around IT services, that because of technology, while it is true that AI and agentic AI has played the biggest impact of agentic AI that you see, it's really in software development. I mean, all the news that you're hearing about Anthropic, getting a release, and then there's a lot of hue and cry about it's going to completely let the IT industry vanish and so on and so forth, IT services industry. But I think the real truth is that, as I mentioned before, while the industry adoption is so low, you do need IT services organization, which is
well, so you become a powerhouse there, somebody else does manufacturing better, so they become a powerhouse there. So that's how the kind of division of labor took place across the world. And suddenly you have a disruption and you find that it's not enough to over-rely on any one power. And it's partly, the COVID pandemic, partly other factors. So then you find that you actually need to build resilience, and resilience comes from diversification. Saying it's not that you have to necessarily do everything yourself. I think that's a mistake we shouldn't try to make. Atmanirbharta doesn't mean that you do everything yourself. It basically means that you do some things and some parts of something and the critical things, and you do them so well that you can't be replaced in that space. So we have, in that value chain, you have indispensability for some portion of it, so that you will always be a force to be reckoned with. So I think that is truly the sense in which it needs to be understood. So I think it actually gives us that opportunity to build that core strength. And when we say a resilient and diversified network, it clearly means that you're adding one more, and that you need to be really strong in that space, which brings you back again to this point of talent. And how do you use talent to make sure that you
research work that there's about $15 trillion worth of economic opportunity that AI brings to the table. And for that 15 trillion leap around the world, we will need people at scale who understand and have the desired skills. So it's the single biggest economic leap that we can take if we get the skilling sorted in place. The second thing is, learning for the heck of learning will not help. Learning and earning has to go hand in hand for it to really make a difference for a country as large as ours. Thirdly, it's the ecosystem that has to come together. There's industry, there's academia, there's digital companies, tech companies. All of us have to come together because no one actor can solve this issue. And if we do come together, trust me, what India did with UPI that the world wants to replicate, we can do for skilling at scale. Because as much as it's an issue that we've got to solve for ourselves, the whole world needs to skill itself in the world of AI. and India through a UPI equivalent social inclusive education stack can solve it not only for India but actually then for the world. India is clearly the largest user of AI at this point in time. And that's why the whole world is looking at India. You know, with 1.4 billion people, with a lot of demographics that are favorable from an India standpoint, large tech ecosystem that we have in the country, we are a large user base. There is an opportunity for us to shift the orbit from being a user to actually being a producer of the digital economy, a producer of the digital stacks and the AI stacks that the world could consume. For that orbital shift to take, we need digital skilling at scale to happen for that next opportunity for the country.